Stacey Abrams has won. So now that is not a big news story. She was expected to win by a giant number. She won by a giant number. Georgia polls closed an hour ago. Alabama and Texas polls just closed about 5 minutes ago. Arkansas polls are going to close in 23 minutes. There's not a lot of races in Arkansas we're covering, but we always tell you if the polls haven't closed, you should go and vote if you're in that state, okay? So, John, you got more results?
Exactly, I do. So, of course, as you said with Stacey Abrams, it was uncontested, so we didn't have any doubt about what would happen there. The fact that it will be her as a nominee does potentially produce an interesting general election when it comes to the Republican side, because Donald Trump has already said at rallies that if Brian Kemp wins, it might be better for Stacey Abrams to be the governor. So maybe she'll get his endorsement, because as of right now, at least, Brian Kemp with just 16% of the vote, he is up 137,000 votes to 40,000. So 74 to 22, he is just dominating David Perdue. It's impossible to say, with the distribution, but it's spread throughout the state, and it's 16%. He's been leading by at least 12, if not like 25 points in the polls that I've seen over the past few weeks.
Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about Georgia, and one relevant fact here is that Rashad was the director of the Democratic Party in Georgia earlier in his life. So, and in fact, you had many interactions with Stacey Abrams when you were in that role?
Some good, some not so good. And during that time, she was much more of a moderate than a progressive. And I was a absolute progressive in my politics and political stance. But I'm glad to see the evolution of people, even if at one point I disagreed with them on some of their political philosophy and how they align in their platform. So yeah, there's a lot of context here. The reason why Stacey Abrams was unopposed is because of the background that happens at the party level. So that's part of it. But there's also this other part. I know that seems great to have a Stacey Abrams who is a friend and a remarkable candidate. It's great to have her unopposed, right? But there's another side of the coin. Here's what happens when you have an unopposed Democratic candidate at the top of your primary ticket. No excitement. No earned media. And you do not get the attention of the other side, because who are we talking about? We're really talking about Perdue, Kemp. We're talking about the individuals who actually have a competitive race. And so you have down ballot races on the primary side as well. They won't get much love either. You're gonna have a significantly lower turnout in the Democratic primary because you did not have a top ticket competitor.
Yeah, I want to just double down on that point. We've talked about that in some of the primary coverage before. So for example, in Ohio, we're talking about on the Republican side for the Senate seat, all you ever heard every single day was J.D. Vance versus Josh Mandel. So now everybody in the country knows J.D. Vance, who eventually won that race, and certainly everyone in Ohio does. But the Democrats hate primaries, so they were like, do not talk about Morgan Harper because she might beat Tim Ryan, and Tim Ryan is the more corporate Democrat, so that's the one they were rooting for. They hate primaries, right? So nobody talked about Morgan Harper or Tim Ryan. So now J.D. Vance has, what, 10 times the name recognition that Tim Ryan does in Ohio? Because we didn't run a competitive primary. And we're not hypocrites. So I want progressives primarying every incumbent Democrat. These days, Stacey Abrams is considered more progressive than the average Democrat. But I would have been totally okay with any primary from the left, the right, or the center for Stacey Abrams, because I know that earned media, Rashad is 100% right. Earned media makes all the difference. And when you don't have primaries, no one ever talks about the Democrats. And by the way, the most spectacular example of that was 2016, when the Democrats didn't want anyone running against Hillary Clinton. And even when Bernie did run, they poo-pooed it for all of 2015 as he was making this miraculous comeback. He closed like 40, 50 points on her that year. And the press barely covered him at all. ABC News covered him for 7 seconds because they got their orders, shh, don't ever talk about Democrats. Meanwhile, Trump swallowed all of the media. And that gave him a massive advantage. For God's sake, do primaries, cover primaries.
Exactly, yeah. I think to put it even more in perspective in terms of the difference in media attention in that race, it wasn't just that JD Vance or Josh Mandel got more coverage than the entire Democratic side. I think that JP Mandel got more coverage than like that one slip up by Trump, I think got more coverage.
Absolutely, than Morgan Harper on
than the entire
level.
race.
But the entire, including Tim Ryan, you're right, absolutely. It's not even in dispute. That's
that
amazing.
one joke news cycle. And in the case of Stacey Abrams, I think a lot of Democrats have a generally favorable approach towards her. But as Rashad is pointing out, she's someone that has moved over time.
Yes.
That's a good time to have a primary. Keep her moving in that direction. And actually, I wanted to ask you, because I know you've had more interaction with her than I certainly have. So you've said that she's changed over time. You used to disagree with her more. Is it your perception that it is genuine?
Let me say this. Let me answer it this way, okay? I think we get too caught up in if the person believes in what they are doing or not. Let me qualify that answer, because I used to really care about your heart. I don't give a damn about your heart anymore. I care about your vote. I care about what you actually will vote for. Let me tell you something. Republicans figured this out with Donald Trump. They know good and damn well Trump is not Christian or an evangelical or conservative. They know good and damn well the man has contributed to both sides of the political aisle. He's praised both Democrats and Republicans. He's had a long history of being a cat that just played politics on both sides, right? So they said, you know what? We're not going to require you to believe a particular way. We're going to require that you behave a particular way. As far as her authenticity, I think she is authentically committed to winning an election. And this is a method to do that. And I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, the communities that I care about, that I love, that I represent and advocate for, they benefit from the right vote. So I'm at this place now. You can have the wrong heart and make the right vote. I'm rocking with you. Because that's the game of politics. And the fact that we have come out of that, where we need to like the person. We need to say, you know what, the person makes me feel good on the inside. Well, damn it, there's some people who will not make you feel good on the inside. But if you put them in office, they will vote in direction of your values. And that's the game of politics. It's like hiring a plumber and saying, you know what, I really want to hire the best plumber, but I need to make sure this plumber is a really, really nice person outside of plumbing. No, I just need to make sure they're a nice plumber.
If I can respond, I would say my concern is that I don't have much actual experience with her votes over a long period of time. So I think what you're describing, I think might better describe the conservative approach to Trump between like 2017 and 2020.
Okay.
Like his heart isn't any more genuinely evangelical than it was before, but now they know the sorts of Supreme Court justices he's gonna put forward. To the extent that he tries to legislate at all what he's gonna support. Whereas in advance of the 2016 election, a lot of conservatives were making the case that this is a guy who is pro-choice. This is a guy who talks about single-payer healthcare. At that point, they had no idea what the votes would be. They needed to actually see some votes to be sure that this is what the person would do. Stacey Abrams, at this point, all I can do is project onto her what I think her future actions will be. And to that extent, how genuine she is might matter to me. I mean, after all, we've had experience with Kyrsten Sinema over the past few years. There are people who will get into office with a strategy of appearing progressive, and then the second they're in, poof, it's gone. I don't think Stacey Abrams is gonna be like that, but some do run like that.
But let me agree with both of you guys, but then add one thing on top. So first of all, I largely agree with Rashad, and the reason is, look, when it comes down to the vote, and that's John's point too, when it comes down to the vote, right? I don't give a damn what's in your heart, at all, not 1%, okay? So here, I give you a perfect example, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Likely very racist, certainly said many racist things. Voted for the Civil Rights Act, not just voted for it, got it passed through a lot of effort. He tried really hard, he deserves a ton of credit for it. Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. I don't care what's in his heart at all. If you had someone who was just the most angelic, non-racist person you've ever seen and didn't get those acts passed, that would be worse. It just would be worse, okay? And if it wasn't Lyndon Johnson, they probably wouldn't have gotten passed because they were really, really difficult to pass, okay? So there's no question about the bottom line, right? And of course, John makes a good point, but what are we trying, but we're trying to figure out, we're trying to guess how they're going to vote. But at the end of the day, I come back to Rashad because it's our job to put pressure on them so that the Stacey Abrams of the world move left and vote left and fight left. If you don't put the pressure on, they're never gonna do it. That's why that is probably the #1 lie of many, many, many lies of the mainstream media, which is don't ever pressure powerful people. Do not ever pressure politicians. You should be civil. You should just vote harder for them. And just cheerlead more for them. That is a lie meant to make sure you don't take action so they can stay exactly where they are, okay? By the way, sorry, John, one last thing. The guy who was pushed to the left the most was FDR. So if you read his history, Roosevelt was not necessarily inclined to do Social Security and so many of the things that he did. There was a super strong left-wing movement at the time, and FDR was in a sense the compromise. So for God's sake, keep pushing. Okay, sorry.
Cenk, I think that's why a lot of people in Georgia wanted a primary challenge to her from Dr. Rashad Richey. But and look, admittedly, he was busy during that time. Here. But maybe next time.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.